Hello and welcome. I'm Patrick Lohr, Head of Customer Insights here at GiveSmart by Community Brands, and we're thrilled to have all of you joining us here today. And today we are talking silent auctions from every angle possible. And we're lucky to have two speakers joining us today who are extremely well versed in this particular area. Susanna Crawford, GiveSmart's Community Manager, and Brandon Steck, our Director of Marketing. Susanna and Brandon, thanks to both of you for joining us here today.
Hello, hello.
Happy to be here.
And be fun. And we anticipate today's call going about 45 minutes or so, and we will be taking questions throughout the call. So please throw any and all questions that you might have into the chat there as they come to you, and we'll be addressing if they're relevant to the topic at hand. Otherwise, we've allocated time at the end of the call for Q&A session. And in addition, one of the most common questions we always get on these is whether or not there's a recording. And just to make sure everybody knows from the start, we will be recording this call, and later today are going to send out the full recording as well as any materials that we cover. So you can look for that hitting your inboxes later on today. And while our topic might be silent auctions, we are going to be having the lively conversation here. And our agenda is going to cover the nitty-gritty around silent auctions. So the who, the what, where, when, how, all of GiveSmart's best found practices in this fundraising area. What the data says, so really what the data that you already have at your fingertips can tell you, and what we've found in our research on the top items and trends in silent auctions throughout the country. And as mentioned before, we've allocated time at the end for Q&A with both Susanna and Brandon. So make sure that you send your questions early and often. And it's enough of me talking. So to get us started here really in earnest, we had a quick poll we wanted to feel everyone out on, which is how happy are you with the results of your organization's latest silent auction? And so we get the poll launched here and folks weigh in. Susanna, can you shed some light for us on your role and really what you do here as the community manager for GiveSmart?
Sure, happy to. Thanks, Patrick. So the GiveSmart community was officially founded in August of 2020 to help you accelerate your fundraising through peer examples, peer connections, and industry insights. My day today is spent listening to our customers and searching through your campaigns, their campaigns, to find unique techniques and the best practices in this truly ever-changing fundraising environment right now. I then take these insights that we have and put them back into webinars like this today, or I send them to our community through bi-weekly insights emails. If you're interested in that, to get some of these examples sent directly to you, any fundraising professional could opt in to become a member at the GiveSmart community. And you can visit us at givesmart.com/community. There also should be a link in your chat shortly where more information can be found and you can sign up.
Oh, that is great. I think I speak for everybody when I say we're very excited to see where the future of community leads us here. And all right, we've got a super majority of people weighing in here. So as we wrap up the poll, bring up the results here. So the results are in. So Brandon, it looks like most folks here saying it went well, but could have went better. So I know you spent a lot of time in the data weeds on this particular topic. So how does this resonate with you?
You know, I'm a little surprised, happily surprised that people are feeling pretty good, but looking just for that extra nudge over their goal, or maybe just a couple other tricks to kind of keep improving. And those that are new to this, we're going to cover a lot around the silent auction and some of the basics, and then some of the more advanced details and things. So really excited to see that there's a good balance of people who are looking just to solve for something small or learning from scratch, which really is cool to see.
No, absolutely. I think it's going to be fun. So with that, earlier today, I was curious as we were looking over this presentation to find out exactly what nitty-gritty went. So Webster's Dictionary told me that nitty-gritty is defined as the most important aspects or practical details of a subject or situation. So that being said, Susanna, can you start us off talking about some of the most important details really as it pertains to silent auctions?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that. And it's funny, I'm kind of going to stay right here with the definitions, right? And when talking about the what, so a silent auction, I found it funny, I Googled it, and what it says is, for Google, is attendees to assess, place bids on, and purchase items. And this webinar is special because this might look a little bit different than it did last year. Google mentions silent auctions with paper and pen framework, and while that really is a tried and true practice, this year, with everything going on, we were really forced to think outside that room. And don't get me wrong, silent auctions have been held online for many years now, but with everything going on, that really got accelerated this year into 2020. So that's the what we'll be speaking on, is online auctions. And then the where. So online, obviously, but we've had some really creative ways that people have been able to include that in-person element into their silent auction and their online auction. Just as an example for you to process. So Jennifer from Dayton's Children's Hospital actually spoke with us on our last webinar in November about their silent auction, and they did a festival of trees, and they were able to find a way to display these trees in the Dayton Town Square, as well as they partnered with local businesses to display these trees in the windows, which was a fantastic idea. It brought people into the store as well as cross promotion. So for the what, online silent auctions. For the where, potentially something you consider, is there a way to be able to display these items publicly, locally, partnered with someone? So that is the where on a hybrid. So with that, Brandon, going to pass it over to you. Can you talk us about a little bit about the silent auction data from 2020?
For sure. A big data point, obviously smacking us in the face here, is this 365,000 number. That's the number of auction items that were sold on our GiveSmart platform this year. That's a lot of things donated or purchased, and quite a variety. And what's nice is that led to more individual bidders than we've been seeing before, more bids on items than we've been seeing before, creating that excitement, being able to reach people outside of the regular scope of your event, people outside of the market. We found some new best practices in regards to having to be able to ship items more often, and that's led to a lot of really great trends and also some tricks. The silent auction overall has gone up as a contributor to events, and we've covered that on a few webinars where really the ratio of giving has increased on silent auctions, because it's easier to do that than to try and figure out how to sell tickets to something online. So you have to make up that difference. So silent auctions was where a lot of that difference was made. While we've seen a success at a large view, I encourage you to ask yourself, what type of auction is best for your community, and where would you kind of hold a hybrid type event? Think about ways that outside the room, outside the box, that you can accomplish that, because we're seeing it. We're going to share a lot of different things here, and we'll jump into some more of the details here going forward.
No, that's great stuff. So now got a lot of what and where and why. So I think Brandon, you had some interesting notes, kind of, I think, on the who side of things.
Yeah, so I know the Grinch is on here, and he's not the most positive person, but it's because of the Whoville that we did that. So just a little play on words there. But who is as important as what? Identifying your donors' interests and asking board volunteers to promote items rather than just your event on social. So if a board member donates an item, ask them to promote it, or if a friend of theirs donates an item, ask them to promote that specific item. That increases interest on different things. It allows them to maybe bring a new donor in that would have interest on that one specific thing, but maybe isn't as attached to your cause. Diversify your items for varying crowds. Don't just have 5 of the same thing up for auction and leave it at that. Have some variety so you can get some more people in, or diversify across your different campaigns. It doesn't have to be all in one auction. You can have campaigns for different types of crowds. You can have a campaign that's all kind of family oriented, and then you can have one for the wine drinking or whiskey drinking crowd, where it's all premium whiskey and premium wine. Having those different things brings in a different element. It allows you to diversify your audience, and it also gives you more opportunity to capture new donors and bring in new items as you kind of have some themes around there. When you reach out to small businesses, talk to them about this being similar to a sponsorship where they get some awareness. Think about that small business and what they can get out of it beyond just making a donation. It's going to be traffic in their door potentially in this day and age. it's a traffic to their site, it's awareness of their brand. Even if they wouldn't, normally be an item that you would target, think about what small businesses in your community are maybe looking to, support their business and get, the word out, but also maybe they're a good fit now with the changing times and how people are shopping even more and more online, that this might be a chance for you to kind of diversify your offerings. That's the main things with Who. We can go on and on about segmentation and a lot of those things, but let's keep jumping forward here.
Yeah, and that's great, Brandon. We put a segmentation guide as well in the chat for people who want to learn more about segmentation in that. But kind of jumping into the when. When do I do a silent auction, and how long should my silent auction be? So Brandon will talk in the next slide about more of the data behind the when, but let's talk about for how long. This is a common question we get asked. So for the 3 years I've been at GiveSmart, we have had a standard best practice around 7 to 10 days for a silent auction to be held. There's a few reasons for this. One, pre-bidding, pre-registration are key for a larger event. So if your auction is included with a larger event, this oftentimes gives people the ability to get on, see what you got going on, read your homepage, learn about your event, your timeline, as well as register their credit card and do the things that you want them to do while on. So that pre-bidding, pre-registration are huge. But also, even if it's not part of a large auction, 7 to 10 days is a sweet spot for not being, too long, where people actually just kind of forget about it, but also not being too short where they might miss that opportunity to bid often. So that's our standard best practice. However, in 2020, we've seen some really unique virtual auctions go on in some really creative ways. So I wanted to give some examples of these. So this weekly or monthly auctions. This is a great way to set a cadence of auctions so people know what to expect. I actually just got a text message from a customer who is, what they do is they take in refurbished furniture for people who need it, and when they receive donations that they can't give out, or for whatever reason that is, they actually put them in an auction, and once a month any donations that they receive that they can't use, they bid it out, and we've seen amazing success with this model for them. Another one, a 24-hour special day auction. So this comes in with making urgency and creating urgency. A good example is we had a South Carolina Wildlife Federation did a Giving Tuesday auction, and I talked to them and they were thrilled with the success that they had. So promoting it in a quick, 24 hours, come on, let's do it, especially around a special day or holiday, we've also seen a lot of success this year. A few more things, staggering auction items. So this might extend the amount of time and how long you are doing. What I mean by this is having certain items open and then maybe 3 days later have the rest open. So this gives you a chance to promote differently and segmented to specific items. So an online auction, you can continue to increase engagement throughout that. And then the last one is premium auction items. This is huge, especially this year. So premium auction items simply mean making standout auction items stand out. So items that you may have wanted to do in a live auction previously, or that you feel are a huge deal, put a banner on the image that says premium item, promote them separately, and you can do things like shut them down before the rest of the items or after the rest of the items, but making those stand out as well and playing with those time zones, we've seen to be creatively successful. Okay.
That is awesome information there. Suze, I think a lot to digest, and we had a few questions come in, so we're gonna, as we mentioned, we'll try and get the ones that are relative to topics in the moment and the others at the end. So Brandon, we've had a few people kind of inquire as it pertains to item solicitations and reaching out to businesses and some concerns, and justifiably so, given everything that's happening, that the restaurant down the street is struggling. So is it appropriate to ask for, a gift card or something like that? So, from a marketing perspective, I'm curious your perspective here on, any recommendations or things of that nature that you have for people who are maybe a little bit concerned with making some of those solicitation requests.
It's a great question and a very valid concern. There's two ways for me to kind of look at this, and I'm gonna try and be succinct, but get you some good answers here. The number one thing to consider is what are the items that do well in an auction versus the items that do well in a game of chance or a raffle. So when you're talking about gift cards and things like that that have a tangible value, a $50 value, a set value that is easily perceived, they're actually going to perform much better most times on a raffle or a gift card tree type thing, where it's a game of chance. You don't know what you're going to get, but at least you know the value of it. And we have some resources on how to run one of those. So that's one way, to think about it. Are you going to run one of those things? And if not, then I would focus on things that maybe work a little bit better in the auctions that we've been sharing data on, and that's experiences. So I saw a question addressing specifically restaurants. So I'm going to use that as an example. Restaurants have the challenge right now of they're not able to be hosting people inside, or at least they're not at anywhere near capacity. And we know that that's something that is challenging to their business, but they do have, hopefully, if they're good restaurants, really good food, and they have the ability to maybe deliver, or they may have the ability to set up, home cooked, quote unquote home cooked meals type things for donors that can create an experience. If they're a premium restaurant, maybe their chef is well known in the community and he's willing to do something to support his business, partnering with them on an experience rather than just asking for a $50 gift card. It is tough, and we have to be mindful of that, but we also can't be afraid to ask, because if you don't ask, you're not going to get anything. So when you look at the opportunities out there, there's a lot of good opportunities to be creative with packaging. And if someone's not able to give as much as they were before, package that up into an experience type package or a family package or a theme that kind of fits with your event. They are looking to get their names out there more than ever, to let people know that we are open, we are doing delivery, whatever the case is. You could potentially build a sponsorship in there and say, you know what, by donating an item will also allow you to be a sponsor. I'm going to stop there because I have a million more ideas, and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit further about some of that, but really a great question, and hopefully that helps a little bit.
Absolutely. And the other thing I think we've seen that's pretty fun is organizations partnering with some of these things. And I think restaurants, the one you mentioned, I've seen a lot where organizations, are reaching out to their donor list to encourage them to attend a restaurant. And I think kind of creating some partnerships that are mutually beneficial is one of the things I think we've seen people do a lot of, and definitely I think a topic we'll jump into. But Brandon, back over to you. And I know this is exciting because people didn't know you were going to be covering this right here, but we've had a lot of questions kind of about, when to do something and how long. So I think, if you could walk us through some of the data as it pertains to what we're seeing with silent auction.
Yeah. So when you look at a silent auction, it's obviously you got to know when to open it, you got to know when to close it, and how long it should last. So we did some deeper dives here on 2020, and I took a comparison even to last year and 2019, and wanted to see what kind of trends we're seeing. So I'll start there. 28% of the virtual auctions that we helped we ran on our platform opened on a Monday. That was the highest of all the different weekdays. So opening an auction at the beginning of the week seems to be the trend, most common, and 37% of those auctions ended on a Saturday. So it could have started on a Monday, ended on a Saturday, and been a 5-day auction. It could have been a Saturday to Saturday, but ending on a Saturday when people are, either it's during the day or at night, when people are maybe gathering for your virtual event. That seems to be the most common trend. And then as Susanna kind of recommended earlier, 7 days is kind of the sweet spot. We found people are shortening things a little bit here. So 57% of the virtual auctions were 1 to 7 days long. In 2019, that was only 52%. So that's a 5% jump up there. Still pretty common. 7 days was by far the most common. And then if we, think about Mondays and we think about the Saturdays, the biggest difference is actually there were 46% of auctions in 2019 that ended on Saturdays. So that's a 9% drop, which means people are finding different days to wrap things up. They're picking Thursdays, they're picking Sundays, mixing it up. And that's often because you want to be active on traffic and you want to be aware for people as they're participating. And virtually, it's different experience where they don't have to go somewhere. So a very interesting trend that we saw there. As we look at this data below, the quarters are broken down here by what are some of the different measurements we've used over time to kind of look at the silent auction. And this is from our silent auction study that we released early this year. If you look at the trends, as the year goes by, the number of bids, the average number of bids actually decreases slightly every quarter. So what's that tell us? Silent auctions are slightly more popular at the beginning of the year versus the end of the year in regards to activity. The starting price is actually a little bit higher. You can ask for a little bit more and you still get a pretty good return on the fair market value. Now, if you look here, the average items were actually cheaper in Q1 compared to Q4, which was interesting. And that's just telling us, okay, there's a trend. Maybe you don't need items that are as expensive earlier in the year, but at the end of the year, some big ticket items really do well. Maybe that's centered around travel. Maybe that's centered around different things that are more autographed items. We'll look at some of those trends in a little bit. But yeah, I mean, some interesting trends here on when and for how long, and when tells us get something going in Q1 and maybe start it on a Monday, run it for 5 days and end it on a Saturday, maybe run it longer. On the virtual side, you have a little bit more flexibility.
No, that is fantastic. I know too, if we haven't already, we'll soon be putting into the chat our silent auction study that kind of goes into some of this data, and definitely if you want to peruse at your own time, I think is helpful. So kind of as we transition here from more a little bit into the how. So how do I set up an item? And we've talked about, okay, I need to keep it open and how do I get it? But in terms of the actual how and starting to get the wheels in motion, Brendan, Susanna, can you guys talk us through some of the different best practices and recommendations you have?
Sorry about that, I was on mute. So as we get into some of the best practices, when you create an item, there's things that we've been talking about for a while that now more than ever it's so important. Having some clean images, photos, videos, and using, if there's a YouTube link that you have, embedding those into the item description and making sure that you're clear there. That's going to be a crucial piece to really telling that story. Setting up the item is not just here's what it is, here's the price, but as you consider, buy it now prices where it's okay, you can have an auction running and someone can just say, you know what, I just want to buy this, versus having auto bid where they set the max number they want to give, and then at some point, they either get outbid and they get notified, or they win the item at the highest point that they can. I would not run these two things at the same time. They're different strategies. When you look at what's going to work, the items that have a perceived number, for like a buy it now, if it's $50 item, a buy it now is probably not going to work as well there. Just depends on, obviously, if that item is like a $10,000 item, that maybe it will. But we recommend trying to use the auto bid first. That allows people to be a little bit more strategic. It includes the game. And oftentimes, if you set the buy it now price at a certain level and someone's willing to give more, you never would have known that because they're not going to pay more than that number. So think about that as you're going through there. And Susanna, I'm going to toss it to you on a few of these other things.
Yeah, thanks. So here's the nitty-gritty, right? Let's talk about item numbers and categories here. This is actually really strategic how these are set up. So when you create an item or a package in a site in an online auction, you are going to be asked to assign an item number to that item. Not only is this going to be helpful for your bidder to search, so if they're like, okay, I remember I'm on, 105, they can search again 105 and have that item pull up. But also on your end, when you're searching through data later, it's going to be helpful as well to have these numbers on here. So a few best practices: always assign 3 digits. So an example, 101, 102, 103. This is extremely helpful as well for the search for the back end and for the bidder experience. Think about it, if you were to just type in number 1, if you labeled that, or if you numbered an item, anything with the number 1 is going to appear. So if you have, things in the teens or whatever that is, all of those items are going to come up. So again, labeling them in a 3-digit number is going to be your best bet. Also know that the highest numbers, so 101, is going to appear first on your page before the later numbers. So talking about those premium items, I saw a question come in on how to do that image, and that would be something you do. So as before you upload the image into the site, you could put a banner across it or something. But on that note, you would want them to go first. So the first thing that people see when they come on your page is those items. So again, the higher the item number, the higher it will appear up on top. Another thing too, categories. So this is for the to make your experience as easy as possible. So creating categories and assigning them to these items, people can easily search through that and find what they might be interested in. Examples are like kid stuff, food, wine, dogs. Specifically in 2020, there's a category that people are adding in called at-home entertainment. I think that's genius. And last best practice here is, if you can wait to assign your item numbers to when you have more of the categories, for you, it's going to be helpful to do all categories, like category 1 in the 100s, category 2 in the 200s, and so on. That way, if someone says like, what about this item 103? You're like, okay, I know exactly what that is and what category that is. So ultimately, helping you out in the back end is going to be your best bet when it comes to item numbers and categories. Starting bids in increments. Okay. So with a starting bid, when you type it into the GiveSmart platform, it's going to automatically populate your starting bid amount, which is how much the first bid is that someone places, at 50% of your fair market value. So I'm going to say that again. If a candle is worth $10 and you type in the value at $10, your starting bid should be at $5. Okay. Now that can be adjusted. It can go, 40 to 60%. I've seen people do outside that range as well, but I would say if you're in the 60% range, that's because that your people are going to bid on it. You have, we'll talk about kind of how but the data around knowing like this is popular in my community, so start that bid, so you get those extra dollars. And if you don't think that this item might go as well, maybe move it towards the more 40%, just to get that first bid and get that motion going. Also a pro tip, as you move on in your silent auction, if you find that certain items are not being bid on, much later towards the end of your auction, you can also discount these starting bids as you move forward. Okay. Oh, and I'm sorry, I said something wrong earlier. For items, the lowest number, so if it's 101, will appear first. So not the highest number, the lowest number. Apologies on that. Okay, increments, moving in. So we recommend 10% of your fair market value. Okay, so if it was a $10 candle or fair market value, your increment would be $1. Obviously, that's a very low fair market value here, but just giving you an example. We also recommend, this will pre-populate in the GiveSmart site as well. When you type in that fair market value, it'll go to 10%. But if it doesn't fit exactly, we always recommend starting it and rounding this to the nearest $5, right? So it bids every $5 versus $3, just to make it more of an even amount as it moves forward. Okay, and last, transaction fees. So transaction fees are just a fact of doing anything online, right? And the processing fee that goes behind it. Just wanted to mention it that with online auctions, you actually can have the option to either allow people to cover those for you, or you can even make it mandatory that they do cover it for you. And just as an example, we've seen and talked to a lot of customers who, now that it is online more than in person, they're doing this a lot more, making it mandatory or at least giving the option for people to do it. And what we've found is that as long as you put, if you're making it mandatory, put it on that homepage or that information from the beginning, donors aren't and bidders are not complaining about it. There's been very little negative feedback to doing that. But again, giving the option is always nice to just kind of keep those extra dollars in your organization's pocket.
That is a lot of awesome information, Susan, on that one. I think definitely some good things to digest. And we had the Grinch previously, now we got Captain Hook. So Brandon and Susanna, can you guys just, we hear people asking all the time, great, I have this stuff and I worked hard to get it, but now how do I get people in? So, what advice or recommendations have you guys seen people do well in terms of really hooking donors in and giving them the best chance to raise as much as possible?
Yeah, good question. That's why we put the hook here, because it is a question that we hear often of how do we attract these bidders onto our site. And truly we found that creativity and resourcefulness are the keys behind this. So for this one, you're really going to want to find what works best for your community and knowing it. So we'll start kind of with a first technique, and these are all things that we've seen our customers do and hear from them directly that they've had major success here. So if it works for you, fantastic. But to start out with this early bird special, so this can kind of go two ways. So either you can promote this in a way to get people to register on the site by this date and you will receive this benefit, or the first 50 people to register receive this benefit, right? So by a date or the first or top people to join. Examples of these benefits and what they could be: potentially a swag item. I know we have a bunch of stuff in our closets, right? Potentially something like that, or maybe a party box if this is attached to a larger event. We've seen that done. Or it could be as simple as like free shipping, right? So the first 50 people will receive free shipping for their items. So that's number one. Number two, raffle. So we've seen people do this again in two different ways. So either every person who registers for the auction receives this benefit, or every time you place a bid, they receive this benefit. I think this is a fantastic way to incentivize people to get on register. And I love the even one about placing your bid, because, bid more, bid often, right? As well as with an online auction too, in the platform, you have all the reporting you need. You can just pull the bidding history and, pick a random winner. So that is very exciting. And then the last one I will talk about is adding an extra element. So while you can have an online auction by itself, it's perfectly fine. Maybe use one of these earlier hooks. We've also seen people sell items to go through this. So potentially like selling masks with their logo on it, or swag items, just to get people on purchasing and, making some action. But over to you, Brandon.
Yeah, real quick on these last two things here of just connecting with groups that have similar interests. So that can be someone who has an interest in what you're offering or your campaign type, or specifically within your mission, to kind of, and hook is maybe not the best word for some of that, but when you look at those groups, it's maybe you have a local community group that is very interested in doing walks together to support organizations, and you have a walk coming up. If you have poker night, find groups that are supporting, or the guys that play poker and want to support different causes. Facebook is a great place to kind of find these different groups gathering, for gatherings, but also when you look at your mission and the different types of auction items that you have, interest levels are going to be higher, on some different things. People just like certain things. So if you have a lot of wine in your auction, maybe look into some of the wine groups and people that are often attending wine tastings, or businesses that are hosting wine tastings. See if they'll promote your auction items on your behalf. That will kind of spread the word. And these are all different ways to kind of reach out and get a little bit more awareness for what you're offering, and obviously to get your mission out there to others. Certainly could keep going, but why don't we jump into another how-to?
And before we do that, Brandon, speaking of kind of connection and making connections, we've had a few questions come in, and I know you spent some time with different kind of organizations in this realm, but the question is around consignment. So there's so many companies trying to get me to buy items on consignment, from trips to memorabilia, and so being a little bit leery that it takes money away, but at the same time it guarantees some items. So what sort of advice or recommendations do you have for organizations who are considering consignment based items at the current juncture?
It's a great question. My first advice is to vet the company. Make sure they have testimonials, they've worked with someone that you're familiar with, or organizations that you're familiar with. Whether it's travel, whether it's autographed items, that's important. On autographed items, make sure there's a certificate of authenticity with that autographed item. But I absolutely see value when it's something that you wouldn't normally be able to get. So think about it as, if you're able to acquire that consignment item in another way that wouldn't cost you money, or it wouldn't have the appeal because someone could go buy, X autographed item just on eBay or something like that, and it's super popular, then maybe it's not worth it to pay consignment prices. But there is value when it's an exclusive or a unique item that is not very popular, that have high appeal. Really great if it matches your theme. But yes, is there a risk when you're of not making as much money? Sure. But you also have the option to double down with consignment companies and do other things that are techniques that allow you to raise a little bit more on top of that one item. We did a webinar, I think it feels like a couple of years ago, on doubling down. And one of the things that really resonates is those are companies that have access to additional things, where it's like, I have 3 people interested in this item. They're all willing to pay X price, way over the consignment price. Why wouldn't we want to make a little extra by doing that? And they can work with you on that. So it's worth considering, but definitely check those out. If you're a customer of GiveSmart, ask your CSM or reach out to us and just make sure, and we'll help you, figure out if it's worth vetting a company that's reaching out to you. But there's a lot of them out there. Do your due diligence, and if it's something that's cool, it's worth it.
Great advice. Awesome. And then kind of jumping in, so one of the key things, obviously, you got the items, you've done some different things in finding people. So now the promotional side of things. So can you guys talk us through some of the best practices and advice you have around how to really get the message out there and get excitement around an auction?
Sure, I'm happy to jump in here, Patrick. So we want to focus today on the text message side of it, because it might not be something that you are currently using, but it also, I remember putting on an auction, and I remember how difficult it was to kind of create that strategy around text messages. So, when it was gala season and we were in person, we had it down to a science, right? That below part here of the day of the auction. It was down to, we knew exactly when. But with 2020 and online auctions, it's a little bit different. So going into that, I wanted to just call out, these are a list of text messages that we would recommend that you include in your strategy. Know that you can always include an email if you also feel like there's more that you need to say for that. But I'm just going to highlight a few of these here, right? And remember that this is being sent out, so take your notes, but this list will come to you as well. So first one, auction preview. I saw a question appear around the 7 days. Is that open or preview? And that 7 days is open, okay? But previewing an item. So if you have the time to, your items and you have the ability to send it out in advance and people can go and look at those items in advance, you can send out a text message. Hey, we just uploaded this item onto the site. Bidding opens on this date. Go check it out now. So that's an option for you. Send a text when you open your auction actually. Auto bid reminder. So this could be something like Brandon talked about, like, hey, make sure to go set your auto bids for the items that you want so the system will bid for you. Encouraging people to do that can definitely lead to some extra dollars here. Items with no bids. So currently right now, there's no link that you can text out that will send to one exact item. However, there is a link that you can send for people to look at all items that have no bids. This is a fantastic way to get those items down and sell out. You can do it if it's a 7-day auction, you could do it maybe once in the middle, but this is really used for more of the end day of the auction when you are really trying to get those numbers down and hype things up. Okay. All right, and then you have some day of the auction here, and the one that I want to point out here is that last text, a congratulations, saying, hey, you've won. Send this to only silent auction winners, not everyone. And you can include a pay link directly there where people can just go on and pay themselves to close out. Also a text message if you have specific like pickup instructions or shipping instructions, anything there, if you want to lead them back to maybe the home page where that instructions exist, that's a great way to get people back to your page to read the important information.
And if I could just add some communication tips there, just quick pointers. Always make sure, if you have them, to text your previous year's users, everyone who participated, because you never know if they were bidding last year and didn't win something, and then they could be interested again this year. Texting the winner of a raffle item individually so they know that they won, but then tell everyone who is attending who won, just as a recognition for that, and they know the raffle's wrapped up. And then for event night, set some alarms on your phone or do calendar invites for yourself for each text message you want to send. It's a kind of a pro tip there from more from Susanna than me. I haven't done as many of those, but get in there and make sure you schedule those out so you don't miss a text that you want to send. And obviously scheduling them helps a lot. And then I think we have a wrap up to the silent auction.
We do, and there was two questions that came in about kind of the communication text. The first was about kind of the GiveSmart system. So somebody had asked if text messages are included, and the answer is 100%. So as a part of the annual subscription, similar to all aspects of the platform, text messaging and capabilities are in there. And then the other question was around, how many messages are too many. And I think kind of as Brandon and Susanna alluded to, is making sure that there's a call to action that isn't redundant, I think is a good thing in going. But I think Brandon, as you mentioned, one of the areas that at an event, the end of the night checkout was always one of the things that I would dread. But as we move into more of this virtual landscape or even hybrid, what sort of things are the two of you seen overall that we can recommend to people as to close things out and really leave a positive impression with the donors as a part of that overall process?
Yeah, so I'll actually jump in here too. So what you guys are seeing is at the end of the auction, GiveSmart, what it does is it automatically takes any items that had no bids and it turns it into a buy now item, which you can see that American Cancer Society South Region is doing right now. And why I encourage this for people is that you are able to sell them out. And so you can either do this, in a flash sale type of way. There's two different ways I've seen, is like a 24-hour like bits, right? So people, you're like 24 hours, buy it out now, create some urgency around that. And we've also seen people just leave it open and continue the promotion. So a huge part of that is when you wrap up, continuing to engage, sending people back to the site, selling out those items and really keeping the momentum going in that. Another part of this is if you are going to do something like this and wrap up, make sure you update your homepage on your site or whatever online auction you're having, and offer what the impact was that was made through your auction. And if you have more of a goal that you need to hit, let people know. bring them back to the site, show them that you're still out there, and also leave that donation opportunity available for this. I was actually just talking to someone who said that they were shocked by their online auction because the majority of donations that came in within that actually came post-event when they did their online sale after. So people were there, they loved what they did, and they helped them reach that goal at the end. Brandon, over to you for a few more points on wrapping up.
Yeah, just real quick, there is a way to put a countdown clock tied to your auction on your homepage and on the auction page. Make sure you use that. That allows people to know how much time's left. It's a good reminder as they visit and revisit the page. They can check in and know how much time's left rather than trying to find the most recent text message that says so. We're often asked about shipping. Shipping in this day and age is much different than it was maybe in 2019 or 2018. So a couple of things we've seen work really well. One is having an item, an instant buy item available for people to purchase shipping on anything they win, so they can cover the shipping costs for your for the different auction items they win. The other way is to incorporate that in the order form as they're checking out. So Suzanne knows the logistics way better than I do, but as you look at making it easy for people, letting them know that they're going to have to cover shipping in the description, and making sure that they know if we're shipping out of state, there's certain rules, all these different things. Lay it out on the site. Obviously, you have to do your research in some cases, but make it clear. So when someone's buying something that maybe is pickup only because it's a certain type of item that's too heavy to ship, make that clear so that when they're buying it, it doesn't kind of come back on you and make it more of a challenge than it needs to be. We can go on and on about shipping and the different things we've seen. There are some examples that we'll share as well of from previous webinars where people have really done some cool things to make it easier. But the item collection is so crucial, because once they win it, you want to make it easy for them to acquire that item. So setting up item pickup times and letting people know when they can stop by a location, if it's your office, it's wherever, knowing that it'll be safe, reminding them, masks required at the pickup location, those kinds of things will all make it a lot easier. Susanna, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I just have one more point. I think it's one of the more difficult things is that payment collection at the end. So I just wanted to talk through that. Making this upfront and easy from everyone by putting this out in your communications in the beginning. We've seen best practice to go ahead, because it's an online auction, you can just charge the credit cards in one swoop. And so if that's your plan, right, we suggest doing it within 24 hours. But if you are interested in, doing checks and such, making a note on your homepage of like, we will charge the credit card. However, if you want to pay differently, contact this person, is going to be really helpful for you. So that way you're not worried about, should I charge it, should I not, and doing those individual reach outs, but just making it a blanket statement of this is how we are going to handle the payments. And if you have something different, contact this person, has been a lifesaver for a lot of organizations. So sending that note too.
Oh, that is awesome, really awesome information. And just as a quick reminder, please keep continuing to send in all questions through the chat. We got a list going to make sure that we cover it in the Q&A. And then if there are any that we don't have a chance to cover at the end of the call, we will make sure to follow up kind of in our post-webinar communication. But moving to the next topic, to so many, the mere mention of analytics, data, insights, or reporting causes a cringe. But luckily, as we'll cover here in this section, you don't need to be Nate Silver in order to derive actionable intelligence from the data. So Brandon, can you talk us through how people can really take their pieces of data and leverage them into action items?
Absolutely. So here's 3 examples of data from a recent campaign ran on the GiveSmart platform. I'm going to talk a little bit about the implications here, but also we did just publish a blog on this type of analytics that you can run on your own, and always happy to answer questions further on this. But as we look at when you wrap up your auction, one of the big things is to look at what was most popular. And there's two ways to look at that. There's by number of bids, which you can see on the left here, that the jewelry and the Dak Prescott jersey were the two most popular items by number of bids. And you can also see by number of bidders, of people who participated. So if you look at the two different graphs, you don't see the same items. That's an indicator that maybe some items had less bids, but more people interested in them. And other items had lots of bids, but maybe only a couple people who are interested in them. So you're able to drill in and on, for instance, maybe the Dak Prescott jersey, if there were two people going back and forth bidding nearly 16 times each, maybe that other person is a candidate to make a donation if you have an opportunity to acquire another one of those items. It's a technique called the double down. It works really well with consignment items, but this data is going to be an indicator for you. It also tells you that maybe those items had a very select interest level. So if you look at that and you say, okay, we had 36 bids on the jewelry, but only a couple bidders, then maybe there's only a handful of people who are really interested in that. So if those people are coming again, or if you know that there's others that are friends with them that might be interested in that, then there's an opportunity. But maybe that item was a one-off. Maybe that item's better fit for a segmented group rather than a big campaign. But then we look at number 509, fourth down on the buy bids. That's this Cake Bread Cellars, which I believe is a wine package. It had 11 bidders, you can see in the middle graph, and 18 bids. Lots of interest. Get more stuff like that. We can continue to share trends around that. And the far right, there's also who was the most active. So these are I covered the names. I want to be respectful of these people's names, but who are the people that were making the most bids? Regardless of the item, they were just very active in our auction. And then you're able to go in and see which users actually won something. If they didn't win something, they have a capacity to give. And that's a goal of ours, right? To know who has a capacity to give and at what level, without being, semi-creepy of like drilling in, okay, this person can give $100, let's ask for $100. But you can also use that strategically to be like, okay, next year we're going to get more things like this because these people were interested in them and they're active. That helps you kind of think through your auction. Happy to discuss this topic more, but I want to be mindful of the questions we have coming in. So I'm going to jump to the next slide, which is
actually, Brandon, I'm gonna stop you. And the number one question we've had a lot of people ask, and I think kind of fits perfectly in here as we're looking at the data is, what is the ideal number of auctions? Is there anything that says, hey, based on the number of guests have this or the number of things? So, what would you say to folks who are inquiring, what is kind of that sweet spot or ideal number of actual auction items to be?
So if the next slide has a little data that'll help with this, but also our recommended ratio is 4 items per person. So 4 people per item. So there can be at least, if you have 100 people attending your event or traditionally attending your event, we'd recommend around 20 to 25 items. That's what we would recommend for typical live events, but that's not changed for what we've seen with virtual as well. Some interesting stuff here that kind of leads in further is what types of items. And we're going to revamp this with 2020 data as well, but this is pretty consistent from what we've done. I've done some audits over the year of what's accurate here. So a couple categories I just want to call out. Autographed items have a great return on their fair market value. Their perceived value does not dictate what people will spend on those. So that's where the consignment comes in. Get those unique autographed items. We saw even before on the previous slide that there were some unique autographed items that did very well in those auctions. If you can get them, great. If that's not your audience, I wouldn't get them. If your audience is not a group that is a sport fan, then I wouldn't be focused on that. But obviously, we're showing trends here. The return is really nice to see there. And then alcohol, wine. I don't know what this says about us as people who bid on auctions, but lots of interest all the time, all throughout the year on alcohol wine packages. And you can see here there's quite a variety. And on the right, there's some items that really don't get bids in auctions. And this is something where we look at, okay, what's the low percentage here? It's food packages. So food packages most often are getting bids. because what we're showing is what percentage of the items that were in the auction had 0 bids, and less than 1%. So if you have a food, a dining experience, a gift card for a restaurant, it does well. And I know there's fear of reaching out to restaurants and they're not doing well and they may get offended, but they want business too. And if you give a $50 gift card and the average plate at the restaurant is $25 to $30, they're going to get money out of that transaction still, because it's not going to cover the entire meal for a family. So that's an opportunity for them to get business in the door or through online orders and delivery. So think about that as kind of a way with restaurants of, we want to help them, and getting people into their restaurant in some fashion is key. And by far the lowest ratio here of things that don't get bid. So there's interest no matter what what's out there. That's the thing that I would say jumps out to me here, as well as some other items that have very high numbers to look at.
Yeah, I'm all of a sudden both hungry and thirsty all at the same time. I think that's a lot of great information there, Brandon. Thank you very much. And so I know the topic is silent auctions, but I'll be doing my best live auctioneer impersonation here to get as many questions in. And as a reminder, we're going to be sending out a recording of the call and all of these questions that we covered, so make sure to look for that. And we've had a lot of questions come in to start about raffles or sales tax or different things in how to handle that. And as always, our recommendation for things of that nature is to check with either your local or state board, for example, the Gaming Commission on the raffle sides and things of that nature, just because each city, state has their own regulations. So always, as a best practice, is to consult with those appropriate governing bodies first, and then see what options you'll have from there. But Susanna, the first question to you, as folks look towards 2021 and kind of some hybrid events, what advice do you have about how to balance an online auction where with people being on site? So if you have kind of two separate audiences, what advice do you have for folks is the best way to handle?
Sure, that's a great question. I would say that your online auction is a staple. It's something that people can wake up to and bid on. It's something that they can do when they're sitting in a doctor's office, whatever. So think of that as really a tool that can be 24/7. And then you have the in-person side. So I believe we're talking about having that in-person audience. So there's a few different ways you can send out text messages to communicate with everyone. So think about that communication that you're putting in there. Does it reach both audiences? Also using a display of some sort. So if you're in person, you can also link literally link with a button to a display of your silent auction. So while this could be on a screen in your actual event or the event area screens, people online could be on the homepage, click that and see that as well. But again, it's really about making clear decisions. So when does it shut down? What is the payment information? All the above to make it work for both parties, and then communicating that in advance as well as throughout that event, and making it very clear for people to be able to follow along and understand what's going on.
No, great question. And it does. And then Brandon, kind of going from hybrid to virtual, a question you talked earlier. So can you elaborate, about your suggestion of integrating a silent auction into a virtual event? So if I have speakers and call outs, what are some of the best ways that you recommend integrating that into these virtual settings?
Yeah, I think one of the big things is use a platform that allows you to kind of have the embedding of the visual. So the video component that you're using, whether it's YouTube or whatever, to do the virtual event with the speakers and the call outs, our platform allows you to have a one screen experience. So people can watch the experience while also bidding on items and using that as a cue. So when you have your speakers on there, you can have messages going out saying, hey, don't forget to bid, and reminding people that it's on the panel to the left. The other thing that you can look at is during callouts, or when recognizing a sponsor, if they gave a specific item or they donated or they sponsored your silent auction. Mentioning it and incorporating that in the communication throughout is a great call out and way to get people to remember, oh, to the left here, I can actually go see the items and see how I'm doing, or if there's something I'm watching. The other part would be, if you have an auctioneer or if you have an MC, have them remind people auction ends 30 minutes after the program, whatever that scenario is, so you can plug that. I think that kind of addresses the question there, but we did do a whole webinar on the live stream experience that we can share with everyone as well. There's quite a bit of techniques that are out there, and the silent auction is definitely a piece of that component of that event.
No, awesome. And my final question to both of you is, what is the favorite auction item that you've seen in 2020, given everything that's been happening? I know for me, it was somebody auctioned off an Amazon surprise box. So they had a package and people bid on an Amazon package without knowing what it was, and I thought that was good creativity. So Brandon, Susanna, for each of you, what would you say are the top auction item that you've seen thus far?
I love this question. I would say naming rights. I saw a school offer naming rights to their building. So anything you can do that's like doesn't take any cost or for you or donate, like you having to go collect that donation, but utilizing what you have. So naming rights is one. I saw another people like they got to auction off and they got to choose the message that goes on the sign outside of their school, right? So you can like change the letters. Someone got to create a message for a day. So really utilizing the resources that you already have.
Yeah, I didn't win the item that's my favorite, but I was really trying to. One thing that really resonated for me was an organization that is focused on literacy, and personally, that's a cause that is important to me. And they had a package that was for young readers, and I have a young son, so it really resonated for me because it was themed to something that fit for me. They communicated it out, and they packaged things together that I normally wouldn't just go out and find. So it was unique books and things that were really a theme and a category that all fit together, and it was a fun package. Also something that was priced reasonably for someone who wasn't able to do the several $1,000 package. So thinking about that lower barrier to entry donor that wanted to just support, I was able to still support the organization through a raffle because they had various options for me to donate, and that was key. So thinking about your donors and not just who can give the most, but who can give. And that really was important to me as someone who wanted to support an organization like that. So that would be my best answer off the top of my head here.
That's great. A good example of kind of knowing your donors and catering towards the community. And really, just as we wrap here, a reminder about our upcoming webinars here. So on Thursday, January 7th, we'll be resuming our Outside the Room Fundraising Success Series with Kaya Nelson, who is the event and merchandise manager for the Humane Society of Utah. And our monthly webinar will be on January 28th, focusing on debunking the myths of virtual fundraising. And for those calls similar to today, all registrants will get a recording of the call, so make sure to register and not miss out. And with that, we thank you so much for joining. If you do have a few moments at the end, you're going to see a survey. If you could please take a few moments to complete. We want to make sure as we put this content together that it resonates and is impactful for all of you. So if you could please take that. And lastly, Brandon and Susanna, thank you so much for joining and offering these great insights to folks.
Thanks.
Yeah, hope it helped.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks again. We're in your corner. If there's anything we can do here at GiveSmart to help you reach your goals and move your organization's mission forward, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you. Have a great rest of the day.